amazing things are happening around the world. Revivals are beginning to emerge, particularly, and this is astonishing, I didn't see this coming at all, in the Islamic world. You only have to go on YouTube and put in a conversion in Islam and you'll find incredible information. Iran in particular, they're closing mosques and people are going to underground churches and they don't care. They can be brutally attacked by the government when they're found, but they don't care. I think one of the most amazing talks I ever heard was the Anglican bishop of, I guess it was Baghdad, but he described how he had baptized a group of people at Easter. And as he baptized them, he knew that half of them would be murdered in the next few months. And they knew that half of them would be murdered, but they still got baptized. That's like the early church. Astonishing. The way they spoke to the world through the way they died. The famous bishop in the Levant who everybody loved. He was a good man. And even the people who were having to enforce the law against Christianity loved him. They just wanted him to say, look, just say Christianity is not true. We know you believe it is, but just say it's not so that we don't have to kill you. And he said, I have loved Christ because he has loved me, and he has never let me down. I will not deny him. So they had to kill him. They actually barbecued him, literally. And the story is that at one point, God was with him in some strange way, and he said, I think you can turn me over now. I'm done on that side. Even wry humor in that situation. And of course, that story went around the world. And there are multiple examples of that. And of course, the Martyrs won. And Rome lost. Rome was brutal. It was powerful. It was good. It had good things. Roman law has some good things. Their civil engineering was amazing. And of course, they set up the spread of the gospel because Paul and the missionaries could walk anywhere in the Roman Empire, which went to the Scottish border and North Africa and no borders. Freedom to wander throughout the Roman Empire and preach the gospel. That's what happened. It would have been much harder if the Romans hadn't put the roads in place, because they built good roads. I remember as a kid, I could take my bike and ride half the way to Stratford-upon-Avon from my home along Ignell Street, which was a Roman road which hadn't been surfaced since the Romans came along. It was pretty deteriorated when I was riding my bike along there, and they surfaced it. I gather they've surfaced it several times since, of course. Roman roads lost. They were not designed for huge trucks, of course. They were designed for marching men, and they lasted a very long while. They did it well, and their aqueducts and the like were astonishing. Early engineering in the civil area is quite astonishing. So, back to what's happening now. In Iran, half the kids say, I don't have any belief. It's the same in our world too. The most rapidly growing religion is no religion, which is, of course, the sort of tacit, empty nihilism, really, which destroys the soul. So missionaries have been going to Muslim countries in various ways for a long, long while, and a lifetime spent there and a few hundred converts would be a lot. But now, for instance, France has said that 1 million Muslims in France have converted to Christianity in the last year or two. And in Iran, the same is happening. Real figures are not available, but it's huge. It's huge. And interestingly, the bit of the gospel that appears to be key, the starting point in many ways, is Matthew 11, where Jesus says, come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And he says, come learn of me. Take my yoke upon you. My yoke is easy and my burden light. Learn of me, because I am gentle and kind, and I will give peace to your soul. And peace to the soul is what so many people want. We live in a world of disastrous anxiety, and we're not handling it at all well. The people who are supposed to be the healers are often suffering from the same problem. When they take drugs themselves without help, we call it drug addiction. When we give them pills to which they become addicted, we call it treatment. It's not very effective. Anxiety in particular is hugely difficult to deal with. So these things are changing. Even in America in the recent past, you've seen the college in Kentucky. I did know its name a moment ago, now it's gone, but they went on in the chapel for about a week. No hysterics or anything, but singing and praying and people changing their lives, getting converted. And that's happened several times. There's a hunger for meaning, and they know that their world is out of control. I was in Jamaica just a few weeks ago, and I ended up, just before the day I came back, I went with a man there who had a heart for kids who'd lost their way, and he'd set up a program in the most dangerous bit of Kingston, West Kingston, to teach them how to do things like fix refrigerators and air conditioning at that kind of level. And there were 30 or 40 kids then. And he asked me to come and talk to them, which was an interesting challenge, but they listened attentively. And afterwards, I was talking to a group of them, and I'd been thinking quite a lot about why there's so much, why the trade in pornography is in the billions and billions of dollars. So there's a lot of use. And I asked one of these kids, who would be 19, 20, I said, what proportion of your contemporaries watch pornography? He didn't bat an eyelid, all of us. Now, if that is true, and he had no reason to lie, that will make them incapable of a proper relationship with a woman, because they get turned on by brutality. Gentle love, which should grow in a beautiful way, is off the agenda. They can't even get stimulated. That's where we're at. I went looking, and I've been looking since, and obviously the trade is huge, so there's a huge commercial push to keep it available to everybody and get them hooked. It's destroying people all over the place. Even missionaries and pastors and priests have a problem, and it ruins their ministry. So, what do you say under those circumstances? Well, we know that insofar as addiction programs work, they invariably involve in a higher power in some way or another. You can't call it what it is, but they can be honest about what works to a degree. If you want to read a description of what it's actually like, read Dalrymple, Life at the Bottom. And a very interesting man and a beautiful writer. He writes for The Spectator sometimes, I think, and the City Journal in the States. But his book, Life at the Bottom, will be an insight for you. He was a psychiatrist in Birmingham, where I grew up, and he was a psychiatrist at Winson Green Prison as well. Very funny, on one occasion he was talking to Jordan Peterson and about addiction, and Jordan Peterson had seen hundreds of patients, and Dalrymple smiled and said, yeah, I've seen thousands, because they all had this problem, and he writes about it there. So that will help you to see that that's what it's like at the bottom, that it's crumbling, and people hold it in check to some degree if they've got enough motivation to do it. I mean, doctors abuse drugs quite a lot. I mean, we've known for years that if an emergency occurs, you shouldn't expect more than 20% of your doctors to be capable of doing their work when they're actually off duty. They control their habits, but they're out of control too. So that's the world that's going on, and the Islamic world is moving. I saw another video of an African Muslim imam saying, look, we're in deep trouble because we don't have the answers. And there's the converts from Islam to Christianity are brilliant in talking to their brothers having become Christian. There's one of them, and you know that his first name is Sam, but he knows the Quran by heart and he knows the scriptures by heart, and he's got a very crisp, logical mind. He's doing an incredible job. And what's happening to Islam is what happened to Christianity in the 19th century. In the 19th century, German theologians began to be very reductive. The famous, who can believe in miracles when we have an electric light? Well, the answer is yes, you can, but we had the gospel, the Bible, attacked. Of course, it's come out the other end quite safely, in fact, improved by it. But Islam had never been subjected to serious criticism. The imams had total power, and they isolated their people from any other influence as far as they can. But what's happening now, of course, is the internet totally changes that. Now, the next bit of today that I'm going to record is the internet and children, but the internet and Muslims is quite the opposite. Because as long as they were fed the Quran and they didn't have anybody who was able to show them, well, maybe, maybe not, there's some problems with that, no criticism. But they're looking at their lives, and they're not stupid when they look at the internet and they say, well, especially if you're a woman, why can't we have more freedom? Why don't we have economies that work? Why, when we run away, do we have to run away to the Western world when the Quran tells us we should never live with the infidels, we should live with other Muslims? But Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, the Arab states, they won't take any of the refugees from Gaza for good reason. Last time Palestinians got into Jordan, they nearly wrecked it. The Jordanians killed a good many thousand Palestinians to stop them taking over Jordan. They've been brainwashed. It's so terrible. I mean, when you hear those videos of a young man calling his mum after October the 7th and saying, Mom, I've killed 3 Jews, it's so great. Well, they've been told since birth that Jews are pigs, that they need to be killed. And they're behaving by what they're taught. Now, we've been teaching our world for a long while that we're just products of time plus chance, and then we wonder why they become nihilistic and hopeless. It's totally predictable. That reality is best described by David Stove, who's now dead. I mean, he was Australia's best analytical philosopher, but he was honest intellectually. He realized it. He said, I couldn't care less about the evolution of features of animals and plants, but I know one thing for certain. There's no way that an evolutionary view of the world could produce human society. It could not produce law. It could not produce metaphysics. And in Darwinian fairy tales, he writes with a pen dipped in a mixture of venom and elegance. Beautifully done. But he will not stand for the Kant, C-A-N-T, not K-N-T. He doesn't want him up with that. He holds him responsible for much of the problem. So we've got our own problems, but fortunately for us who claim to belong to the faith, the problem lies at the foot of the secularists. And I'll say more about that in a bit that I'm going to record separately. So I hope I've left you with something to think about. That's my objective, and perhaps a book to read. One, for those of you who are medical, maybe those of you who are not, is this one. David Wotton's Bad medicine, doctors doing harm since Hippocrates. Not until the 1860s was it a good idea to go to the doctor if you wished to live longer. You can think about that too. Have a good week.